My stepmother tried to kick me out of my own house. She wasn't ready to find out I was the real owner. When I was 14, it was just me and Dad and the slow ache of losing Mom. Cancer didn't kill her in one blow. It dragged her out of us piece by piece, like pulling threads from a sweater until there was nothing left but holes. Those last few months, Dad was a ghost. He tried to be strong, but you can only be strong for so long when the person you built your whole life around is fading right in front of you. After she died, it was like someone hit pause on our house. Everything stayed exactly the same, her slippers by the bed, her favorite coffee mug in the sink, but none of it felt real. Just a museum of a life that ended too soon. For a long time, it was just us in that frozen place, pretending we could survive inside it. Then, when I was 17, Dad met her. Marcy. The woman who would become my stepmother. I didn't hate her, not right away. I wasn't stupid. I saw the way Dad smiled again when he talked about her. The way he shaved more often, started fixing things around the house like he actually cared if it fell apart. After years of silence and empty dinners, it was like someone lit a small fire under him. So I swallowed the lump in my throat and decided to be okay with it. For him. He deserved a little light after all the darkness. Marcy moved in 6 months after they started dating, bringing her daughter Katie with her. Katie was 15 then, 2 years younger than me, and sweet in that wide-eyed, slightly spoiled way kids get when their parents tell them they're the center of the universe. Marcy treated Katie like spun gold, which I guess would have been fine if she hadn't treated me like the dirt under it. It wasn't open hostility, not at first. Just little things. Comments about how messy boys were. How I needed to learn some manners after living with just men for too long. How Katie was such a blessing and so easy to love. Dad didn't see it. Or maybe he chose not to. He was too busy being happy for the first time in years. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd be out soon anyway. College. Work. A life of my own. I could survive a few awkward dinners and cold shoulders for the sake of his happiness. I told myself that over and over, even when the walls of the house I grew up in started feeling smaller and smaller every day. Even when it stopped feeling like home. When I left for college, I barely looked back. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't anger. It was survival. I worked part-time jobs, studied late into the night, ate more instant noodles than any human probably should. But I didn't complain. I was building something. Piece by piece, away from the house that no longer felt like mine. After graduation, things finally started to line up. Got a decent job at a logistics company. Nothing flashy, but steady. Benefits, a salary, a little apartment with peeling paint and a view of a dumpster, but it was mine. For the first time since Mom died, I felt like I could breathe. I kept my distance from Dad and Marcy. Holidays, birthdays, the occasional phone call to check in. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Until the company got bought out. Some suit from New York decided we didn't fit into the new vision, and just like that, half of us were gone. Severance was a joke. I had some savings, but not enough to ride out months of job hunting in the city. So I did the logical thing. Swallowed my pride. Called Dad. Asked if I could crash for a little while. Just until I got back on my feet. He didn't hesitate. Of course, he said. This will always be your home. I should have remembered that he wasn't the only one living there. From the second I walked in, it was clear Marcy wasn't thrilled. She smiled, tight, forced, and asked how long I was planning to stay, like I was a mold problem she hoped would clear up on its own. Katie wasn't around much, off at college herself, so it was just the three of us. Me. Marcy. Dad, who was thinner than I remembered, paler too. Turned out he'd been dealing with health issues he hadn't mentioned on the phone. Some kind of treatment, weekly hospital visits. He brushed it off, like he always did. Said he was fine. I didn't push. Didn't want to stress him out. I told myself it was temporary. A few weeks. Maybe a month. But finding a job wasn't as easy as I hoped. Interviews fell through. Promises turned into polite rejections. The longer I stayed, the colder Marcy got. Little jabs at dinner. Comments about how some people needed to pull their weight. Once I overheard her on the phone with Katie saying, "It's like having a stray dog that won't leave." I tried not to let it get to me. Bought my own groceries. Cleaned up after myself. Paid for anything I used. Didn't make a scene. Didn't tell Dad. I figured he had enough on his plate. But Marcy wasn't satisfied with just making me feel unwelcome. She wanted me gone. One night, about a month in, she finally snapped. I came home from another failed interview to find my stuff, not packed neatly, not even boxed, just dumped in trash bags by the front door. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes full of contempt. "You're a grown man," she said. "We're not running a charity. You're an embarrassment to this family." I opened my mouth to argue. To remind her that I bought the groceries, paid for the utilities, kept the house together while Dad was too weak to lift a hammer. But what was the point? In her eyes, I was already gone. So I left. Took the trash bags. Took the last scraps of dignity I had. Found a cheap room to rent in a part of town where nobody asked too many questions. And sat there, alone, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering how a place that once held every good memory I had could now feel like a locked door I didn't even have a key to anymore. A few days later, just when the anger was settling into something colder, harder, a message popped up from an unknown number. "Please meet me. It's important." No name. Just a location. I almost deleted it. Almost ignored it. But something, call it curiosity, call it stubbornness, made me go. I parked 2 blocks away from the coffee shop, just in case. Old habits. I didn't know if I was walking into some weird trap, or worse, another lecture about how I ruined everyone's perfect little life. I almost turned around twice. Almost said screw it. But something kept my feet moving. When I walked in, I spotted her right away. Katie. Sitting at a corner table, fiddling with the sleeve of her coffee cup, looking like she hadn't slept much. She looked up, caught my eye, and gave a small, nervous wave. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe smugness. Maybe pity. But what I saw in her face was just tired honesty. I sat down. She didn't waste time. "I'm sorry," she said, blurting it out so fast it almost didn't register at first. "I'm sorry for Mom. For all of it." I just stared at her. She bit her lip, eyes darting around like she was afraid someone might overhear. "I left right after graduation," she said. I couldn't take it anymore either. "Mom, she's not okay. She never was. She tries to control everything. Even now. She sends me these insane emails, telling me what's happening at the house, what Dad's doing wrong, what you're doing wrong." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's like she thinks if she says it enough, it'll make it true. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to snap, to ask where she'd been when I was being kicked out like trash. But the bigger part, the tired, worn-out part, just felt relieved. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. Someone else had seen it too. She hesitated, like she was weighing every word. "I needed you to know it wasn't you. It was never you. It's her." For the first time in weeks, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just a strange, heavy kind of release. I nodded. "Thanks," I said. 2 stupid little words for something that felt like pulling a thorn out after years of infection. We sat there a while longer, talking about nothing. About school, about crappy apartments, about jobs we hated. Just 2 almost strangers trying to stitch something real out of the scraps we had left. After that, I focused on getting my life back together. Found a steady job. Saved every penny I could. Rented a tiny studio apartment with creaky floors and bad plumbing, but no one telling me I didn't belong. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like an intruder in my own life. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. For a second, I thought about ignoring it. But something in my gut told me to pick up. It was Katie. Her voice cracked before she even got to the point. "It's Dad," she said. "He's gone." I sat down hard on the edge of my bed, the walls spinning around me. Gone. Just like that. I don't even remember hanging up. I just remember the feeling, like something had been ripped out of me, something too big to understand all at once. I knew I had to go back. Knew I had to face everything I'd tried so hard to leave behind. I just didn't know how much was waiting for me. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Grayer. Like it had aged along with all of us and didn't know how to pretend otherwise. The funeral was a blur. Too many sad faces I barely recognized. Too many pats on the back that didn't mean anything. Dad looked peaceful in the casket. I hated that word, peaceful. Like death was some kind of mercy. But maybe, after everything, it was. I stood in the back during the service. Didn't say much. Didn't cry. I didn't know how. Afterward, people gathered at the house. Food on plastic plates. Soft murmurs. Marcy floated from group to group like a ghost in human skin. I caught Katie's eye across the room. She looked about as done as I felt. When the last of the casseroles and condolences dried up, Marcy turned on me. It didn't even take long. 1 minute she was hugging a neighbor, the next she was standing in front of me, face red, voice trembling with fury. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You stressed him out. You made him sick. If you hadn't come back, if you hadn't burdened him, he'd still be here." People froze around us. Turned to listen. Katie's head snapped up from across the room. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The weight of grief, of guilt, of years of swallowing my anger, it all sat heavy on my tongue. "You have no right to be here," Marcy kept going, voice rising. "This is my house. My family. You're just a mistake that should have stayed gone." For a second, the room spun. Not from sadness. From pure, white-hot rage. But before I could say anything, Katie stepped forward. "Enough," she said. "Come. Cold. Final. Mom, stop. He's not the mistake. You are." Marcy turned to her, stunned. Like she couldn't believe her golden girl would ever raise her voice. Katie didn't flinch. "You treated him like garbage. You treated me like property. You controlled everything and still lost everything that mattered. This house, this family, you broke it. Not him." Silence. Thick and choking. Marcy opened her mouth, but Katie cut her off. "You want him out?" Katie said, voice shaking now, but steady. "Too bad. You're the one who needs to leave." For a second, nobody moved. Then Aunt Helen, my mom's sister, cleared her throat. "Maybe you should know something, Marcy," she said, stepping forward, voice cutting through the heavy air. "This house. It's not yours. It never was. After my sister died, our mother left it to her grandson. To him." She pointed at me. "Legally. Fully. Irrevocably." Marcy went pale. Like the blood had been drained out of her. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on dry land. Katie's face didn't change. She didn't defend herself. Didn't back down. She hadn't known about the deed. She stood up for me because it was right. Not because of money. Not because of anything else. Just because. Marcy stumbled back, mumbling something about needing air. Katie followed her outside. Later, I heard she convinced her to check into a clinic, psychological recovery, supervised therapy. Maybe there was hope for her. Maybe not. I didn't really care. What mattered was this: when the dust settled, I wasn't standing alone. I had the keys to the house in my pocket and my sister, my real sister, sitting beside me on the front steps, picking at a splinter on the railing and complaining about how much work the place needed. We rebuilt it, little by little. Fixed the cracks. Repainted the porch. Planted a stubborn little garden in the front yard that mostly refused to grow. And somewhere along the way, without either of us really planning it, the house started feeling like home again. Not because of the walls. Not because of the roof. Because of who stayed when everything else burned down. Because of who chose to stay. When I moved back into my aunt's house, I told myself it was temporary. Just until I got on my feet. A few months, max. I needed time, and she had always said the door was open if I ever needed it. Family's family, she told me once when I was a kid, scraping my knee in her backyard. No matter what. I guess I wanted to believe that was still true. At first, it wasn't bad. My aunt still treated me like one of her own. Made coffee in the mornings. Asked about work leads. Left the porch light on if I stayed out late. Her son, my cousin, Travis, wasn't exactly thrilled to have me there, but he didn't say much either. He mostly stayed in the basement, gaming or sleeping or doing whatever it is guys who never really grew up do. I picked up the slack without being asked. Fixed the leaking sink. Painted the front steps. Drove my aunt to the doctor when her back acted up. Paid for groceries without making a show of it. Just small things. Things you do for the people who once packed your lunches and clapped for you at stupid little school plays. It wasn't perfect, but it was a roof. A place to breathe. I worked nights at a warehouse, busted my hands unloading trucks. Sent out resumes in every free moment. Ate whatever leftovers were in the fridge and tried not to take up too much space. Travis barely noticed me, or pretended not to, but sometimes I caught him watching from the corner of his eye, like he was counting how many bites I took at dinner. Like every forkful was coming out of his pocket. I tried not to let it get to me. I told myself it was pride. Boys our age don't like feeling like they're competing for scraps under their own roof. I gave him space. Gave him everything I had left to give. And still, the air in that house got heavier every day. Like it knew something was coming before I did. It was a Thursday night when it finally snapped. I was lying in bed, half asleep, thinking about the interview I had the next day, when I heard the door to my room creak open. Heavy footsteps, unsteady breathing. I sat up fast, heart thumping. It was Travis. Reeking of cheap whiskey and bad decisions, swaying in the doorway with a stupid, lopsided grin on his face. "You know," he slurred, pointing a shaky finger at me, "you're a real piece of work." I didn't say anything. Just sat there, letting him tiptoe toward whatever garbage he needed to spill. "You sit here," he sneered, waving his arms around like he was presenting some kind of exhibit. "Eating our food, sleeping in our house, pretending you're one of us. Like you belong here." His eyes were bloodshot, mean. His voice dropped lower, almost a growl. "You ever get sick of yourself? I mean, really? Doesn't it make you want to puke? Being this pathetic?" He laughed, short, bitter, ugly, and stumbled back against the doorframe. "You're just dead weight, man. Always have been. Always will be." I didn't say a word. Didn't shout. Didn't defend myself. What was the point? Drunk words or sober thoughts, right? I sat there until he staggered off down the hall, bumping into walls like a pinball. I lay back down, staring at the cracked ceiling, feeling something hollow out inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just this deep, cold clarity. I didn't belong there. I didn't belong anywhere they thought they were doing me a favor by letting me breathe their air. I packed my bags the next morning before anyone else woke up. Left a note for my aunt on the kitchen table. Found a place. Thanks for everything. Love you. A lie, mostly. I hadn't found anything yet. Just knew I couldn't stay another second. Travis thought he'd saved his family from a burden. Thought he was the hero who kicked the stray dog back out onto the street. He had no idea what was about to fall on him once the dog was gone. I found a room that afternoon. Nothing fancy, just a basement with a window the size of a shoebox and walls that smelled like damp concrete. $400 a month, cash only, no questions asked. I paid the first 2 months up front and moved in that same night. My entire life fit into the trunk of my car. A duffel bag of clothes. A coffee maker. A toolbox. That was it. I slept on the floor the first few nights, under a borrowed blanket, eating instant ramen and watching the ceiling leak when it rained. But it was mine. My mess. My silence. My little broken kingdom. I worked any job I could find, construction day labor, unloading pallets at night, some temp office gigs when I got lucky. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. I stopped calling. Stopped texting. Focused on putting one piece after another back into place. Travis didn't cross my mind much after that. Not until a few months later when a mutual friend from high school texted me out of nowhere. Asterisk, you hear about Travis? Asterisk, I didn't answer. Didn't want to open that door. But he sent another text anyway. Asterisk, his mom kicked him out. Said she couldn't take it anymore. Asterisk, I sat there for a long time staring at that screen, feeling nothing. No victory. No satisfaction. Just an empty kind of confirmation. The same kid who had stood in my doorway, drunk and smug, bragging about saving his family from me, had collapsed under the same roof without me there to carry the weight. He got a taste of the real world, rent, bills, no safety net, and it chewed him up like it chews up everyone who thinks they're owed something just for existing. Meanwhile, I wasn't thriving exactly. But I wasn't drowning either. I was standing on my own 2 feet, however shaky they felt some nights. And somehow that was enough. Life didn't magically get better. It came back in slow, stubborn pieces, like a puzzle with half the box missing. I worked every shift I could find. Construction sites. Warehouse docks. I delivered groceries in the rain. I patched drywall for landlords who barely paid me minimum wage. It wasn't glamorous. Most days, I came home smelling like sweat and asphalt, falling asleep before my head even hit the pillow. But it was mine. Every tired step. Every cheap dinner. Every dollar earned with my own 2 hands. I saved what I could. Bought a second-hand mattress off Craigslist. Found a battered couch someone left on the curb and dragged it up 2 flights of stairs by myself. I wasn't living large, but I was living. And little by little, it stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like pride. Meanwhile, the world I left behind crumbled without me. Travis, the same guy who stood in my doorway and called me an embarrassment, got himself kicked out by his own mother. Couldn't pay his bills. Couldn't hold a job. Couldn't fix a leaking sink without calling in favors he hadn't earned. The same woman who once believed he was saving the family ended up locking her door against him. Maybe if I was a worse person, it would have felt good. Maybe if I was smaller, pettier, I would have laughed. But the truth is, I just felt nothing. I wasn't there to gloat. I wasn't there to pick up the pieces. I wasn't there at all. That life wasn't mine anymore. One night, after a long shift hauling freight, I sat on the edge of my bed, this cheap, second-hand bed in a tiny apartment over a noisy laundromat, and realized I was okay. Not perfect. Not healed. But okay. I wasn't the burden they made me believe I was. I wasn't broken because I needed help once. I wasn't weak because I fell. I was standing now. On my own 2 feet. Not because anyone lifted me up, but because I built something from the ruins they left me. And if they couldn't see that, if they still told themselves I was the problem, that was their story to live with. Not mine. I didn't need to win. I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to live. On my terms. And finally, I was. Subscribe, hit the like button, and explore more fascinating stories.